I think I've got this set up now. I think I got this set up okay. I think we're okay. Although, as per usual, I've got like the two different, got my two devices going. So I can be super profesh. So I got like, and on my iPad, because my laptop is at the shop, and that's a whole other story. A whole other story of woe. Where my laptop just stopped working, just stopped. It was kind of a jerk the whole time. I've had it since June, and it's kind of been a jerk the whole time, and it just stopped. I couldn't turn it on. So annoying. And then, one moment while I plug this in. So then I took it over packed it up and took it over to Best Buy where I bought it, so that Best Buy can send it to Dell, who are the manufacturers, and blah, blah, blah. And of course, didn't I drop my backpack? I put it in my backpack, my holder and everything. Didn't I drop my backpack on my stone tile floor on the way out of my house? Yep. Yeah, I did do that. I did. So then I brought it into Best Buy, and the Best Buy people were like, oh, it has a big dent right here. So has it been dropped? And I'm like, would you believe that it was not dropped? It was dropped literally on the way over here, way after it stopped working. Would you believe that? And they were like, well, maybe. And then they were like, well, it's going to be up to Dell whether they fix your laptop or not, because this isn't covered by warranty. And I'm like, it was like this before I dropped it. It was a jerk. It's been a jerk the whole 3 months I've had it. Anyway, so we'll see. Maybe they'll believe me, maybe they won't. I don't know. That is good times all around. Good times. Hi, Gabby. Nice to see you there. Anyway, so on Facebook today, I'm on my iPad, which has a weirdly different color than on Instagram, which has a different color. Instagram has this brighter color, and Facebook has this. Anyway, whatever. Let's get to it, shall we? So, because I'm on all these weird devices, and I'm everything's all over the place right now. Good morning, Gabby. I see you. My attention is in weird places, so I apologize if it looks like I'm not looking at you. I'm probably not. Oh, see, it doesn't look like I'm looking at you. Here, let's see. Maybe I can do this. Wait, where's the camera on my iPad? Is that the camera? No, camera. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, the camera on my iPad is in a different place. So I'm gonna do this, and then I'll look like I'm looking more at you. Okay, here we go. Let's do it. Hi, I'm Dr. Janet Coates. I don't have my land acknowledgement pulled up right now because I'm in weird other places, and I unfortunately don't have it memorized. However, what can I say? I am on traditional lands of Native people, and I am grateful. I'm grateful to be able to live and work on these lands. And I did an AMA yesterday, and Ask Me Anything on my Instagram platform. So my Instagram account, I did an Ask Me Anything, which I think is still open. So if you want to throw some other questions up there, feel free. But I'm not going to answer those questions here. And the questions that people asked were so in-depth and so good. And I was like, oh boy. And I already also said that, I'm not going to be answering those questions. I'll answer a little bit here on Instagram, and then I'll do more in-depth responses on in live office hours, which is what we're here for today, more in-depth responses. So those are over on my other, my old rotten laptop over here. So anyway, here we go. So someone put up just breathing exercises, talk about breathing exercises. And so one thing that I wanted to, and I basically said, anything that gets you inhaling with the intention to communicate or engage counts as a breathing exercise for me when we're talking about breathing for singing. And I did do a live about breathing and teaching breathing and versus teaching breathing for singing. I did a live about that actually last week. I think my office hours, I talked about this in my office hours last week. So if you're interested in that, take a look back at those office hours. Just some ideas around that. And I wanted to add to that conversation from last week. I think that there are times when we're definitely going to want to do some breathing exercises in the studio, for sure. And there are times when we're going to want to change some aspect, especially of inhalation. We're likely going to want to change some aspect of inhalation. And I think that this applies most predominantly with Western classical singing. I think really does apply most predominantly with Western classical singing. And in those instances, because the body is so interconnected, like this whole instrument is such a connection, right? Because the body is so interconnected, I think that if you're working with a singer, or if you are a singer, where you feel like there's some aspect of the breathing that is really getting in the way of their best coordination for the singing, and especially in Western classical singing, but you haven't been able to kind of isolate and you haven't been able to kind of figure that out, I would highly recommend working with one of our top, movement and breathing coaches in the industry. So someone like Sarah Whitten would be someone to consider working with. David Wilson, who else? Sorry, the other people aren't coming into my head right now, but anyone who does movement and coordination in the body and movement, those people are going to be able to do a really nice pinpoint for you of what the surrounding issues are what the physiological things are that are going on that are impeding that breathing. Because it's never just about like, oh, they can't breathe, right? It's never just that. If there is something in the breathing that is having a detrimental effect on the actual tonal outcome and on the coordination to create the tonal outcome we're looking for. Hi, Galen Ann. If there is something in the breathing, then and we're not able to, and we're not quite getting to it, we're almost always talking about something physiological somewhere else in the body that is having a detrimental effect usually on inhalation. So if you're finding that, and if you're feeling like, okay, there's something going on here that is breath related, something with the breathing, inhalation, something with how onset is working, something along those lines, I would highly recommend working with someone who specializes in singing and movement, or singing, and some of our yoga folks are terrific as well for this. So like I said, Sarah Whitten might be someone to do a consult with, someone like David Wilson here in Canada as well. So, and there are several others and none of their names are coming to my head right now, but those two in particular are at the top of my head right now. So something to consider. So that was the breathing one. Let me see if I can. Oh yeah, good. I've got, like I said, I've got this up on my other, there we go. So someone else asked best exercises to help students find their mix. And I was a little bit flippant and said in response, once you understand the possibilities for vocal tract shaping, plus I said thick folds chest voice versus thin folds head voice, meaning vocal tract shaping plus glottal shaping within a specific pitch range, then you will be able to come up with all of the exercises that will work for that student in front of you, right? So once we have a deeper understanding of how these things actually work physiologically, and in terms of science, the science of sound, and how we create sound waves and all that stuff. So once you have a slight, and I don't mean like you have to understand formants. I don't mean that. I mean understanding that like, that kind of shaping, this kind of wide open shaping is likely going to lead us toward a more belty sound. It's going to give us a little bit more belty sound no matter what our glottal shaping is, right? But that kind of shaping, ha, is only available to us in a specific pitch range, right? So we need to have this kind of understanding of where this is. And many of us work this way and know this information intuitively. When I do specific, when I do, for example, my contemporary voice pop-up voice ped class, or when I did the Performance 101 voice ped class, in those classes, and when I work in the contemporary voice practicum, etc., so many voice teachers are like, oh, that's why that works. Oh, I get that. Okay, so I've been using this exercise and that's why it works to do this thing. Because once you understand the science, you're like, oh, yeah, I've been doing that the whole time. And that's why. Okay, so, once the understanding of the science makes what you've been doing more explicit. It helps you to be more explicit about, oh yeah, and build on the things that you're doing that are really working, right? Because you're like, oh, that's why that's working. Oh, I can build on this thing and do it more, or go farther in that direction because it's working because of this. So that's the kind of long and kind of probably not the answer you're looking for. However, if you're looking for mixing exercises, let me give you a couple of resources, just like in the other question. Let me give you a couple of resources, and I should maybe take some notes so that I can tag people in these resources too. That would be a good thing. Who did I talk about already? I talked about Sarah and David. All right, talked about those guys. Let me just do that. That's for the breath work. And then for mix, so some great resources. There are a couple of textbooks out there. As always, I really love Kari Reagan's book, Dr. Kari Reagan's book, where is it? It's somewhere around here. It's somewhere. Anyway, it's on my shelf over there. A Systematic Approach to Voice. So I really love Dr. Kari Reagan's book. There's lots of exercises in there, as well as explanations about why things work. So there's some good mixing exercises in there. Cross Training in the Voice Studio also has some excellent, this is Norman Spivey and Mary Saunders Barton's book, also has some terrific cross training and mixing exercises in it. So if you're looking for specific exercises, the other one is, the other place to look that I've been just loving is Maddie Tarbox's Instagram account. She probably has a Facebook. I don't know. She might have Facebook too. I only know her on Instagram. Again, I'll do a tag in there. And Spivey, Saunders Barton. But she does. Sorry, I'm just writing this down so that I can tag people afterwards. She does a bunch of. I think she might even have like a Monday mix exercise thing that she does too. Like she literally has where she's like, okay, try this exercise. So that's a great resource if you're looking for specific exercises. Like I said, once you have a good understanding of what's happening, you can kind of make the exercises up as you go along to kind of, or you can also, change exercises that you already have to make them into a mixing exercise. So I love using messa di voce exercises, which are considered to be for like, which are primarily Western classical exercises, meaning messa di voce, meaning we go from so we go start here and we go into our, and then we go to this. What's that called? Soft, loud, soft. Yes. So we play with amplitude essentially. And in the good old days, in order to be considered an accomplished vocalist, and in order to be, have your, your technique, you would be training toward being able to create a messa di voce on every note, every pitch in your range, on every vowel in your range. So, not on every vowel in your range, on every vowel. So every vowel, every pitch in your range, you should have the control and the coordination to be able to create a messa di voce. So, I do that. I use that now as a mix exercise and as a cross training exercise. So I'm starting maybe in an ooh on ooh, So I did a little cross training, and somewhere in that middle section is probably a mix, right? That's probably a mix, right? Somewhere in that middle section. And the way that I mean, so like I said, you can use any exercise can be a mix exercise if you kind of play. And something that Anne, names have gone out of my head as per usual, messaged me as well on Instagram, was talking about using a specific sound from somewhere else in your repertoire. So if you are using, if you're working with a student and they're not able to access mix on something specific, say in the middle of a song, but they've got it on a different pitch range, maybe a different vowel in another song, take that part of the song where they've got it and just kind of spread that around, right? Start to like play with that. Let's change the vowels slightly. Let's change the pitch slightly. Let's change the volume slightly. Start to play with where they've got it already nice and easily, nice and where they're already well coordinated. Start to play with that in that pitch and move it around. That can be a really lovely way to find a good mix. And the other thing that you know, we've done from time, since the beginning of time, especially in our popular music styles, is go for mimicry. I do the thing, you do the thing. I do the thing, you do the thing. Let's not have any explanations. Let's just allow our bodies to do some coordinating according to what's happening in the ear. Or I listen to the thing on the recording and then I do it. I listen and I do it. I listen and I do it. Without having to go through the like, how do I do this thing? So you can create an exercise that way. So those are some thoughts on mix exercises. One of the other things that someone asked is, what's a resource you'd recommend that streamlines admin tasks so that you can get to just enjoying teaching singing? Which, such a good question. And the main thing that I would say is find a way, if you haven't already, find a really great scheduling software. Find that scheduling software for you. And because that will, there's so many things, so many great things, but that is one quick and relatively pain-free way to really free up some stuff for yourself. Scheduling software. So when I had a more traditional voice studio setup, and if I was still teaching in a traditional voice studio setup, I would still be using My Music Staff. It's so inexpensive on a monthly basis. There are some limitations in it for sure, but for a regular sort of traditional voice studio where you're seeing the same students every week at the same time, with maybe some drop-ins or whatever, but that kind of traditional setup, I love it so much. It has a payment gateway. It has a rudimentary but very functional, what's it called? Bookkeeping element to it as well. You can put your receipts in there. It generates reports at the end of the year. It has, like I said, it has payment gateways that you can use as well, so folks can pay through credit card, etc. Like, I think that is one terrific way, if you haven't already, to get some of that admin off your plate. The other thing, I mean, they asked for a resource here, so but the other thing to do is to have a really strong set of policies. But that's a whole other live, and maybe with a whole other person. Because policies are related to how you want to run your business, and understanding that you are running a business, and understanding what's going to work best for you and your students, and blah, blah, blah. So like having a really strong set of policies also will lower your admin, but that also takes a lot of work to get to. So anyway, that's deeper than we need to go today. Someone asked, is middle school too early to start teaching mixed belt? And the short answer to that is nope. Nope. And the long answer to that one is, with the caveat that we're always working toward freedom and release and children sounding like children. So there are going to be times when children in middle school, when we're working on mix, for example, so the exercise that I just did, that mix exercise I just did, that one can't, like that's, kids can do that, like children can do that exercise. They can start on an ooh, ooh, like their quietest little hooty owl ooh, ooh, ow. And they don't have to get loud per se in the middle. All they have to do is open up their mouth a little bit and go into more of a chesty sound, like a little bit more intense in the middle there, and then come back. That's a mixy exercise, right? So, and we can train children to sing in their speech level voice, and then their higher hooty owl voice. I mean, this is certainly, there's zero problem with training children in mix. And it really depends on what we mean by belt, right? So belt gets a really, can have a really negative connotation when we think of when we say belt, but we mean yell. So if you mean yell by belt, then no, but no one should be really likely training to yell, right? So, and I mean, when I say yell, I mean yell in like the way too much pressure. We've got like, you know, likely no release in the sound, you know, like that's what I mean by yell, right? So we're likely not going to be training anyone to do yelling unless maybe for a role or something. I don't know. There are obviously exceptions to that, but overall, we're not really training yelling anyway, right? So if we're talking about belt as in the mix, the coordination that gets us this high intensity sound in a specific range of the voice, then yes, we can absolutely be training toward that in the same way that we're training toward like in Western classical training, for example, we might be training toward this kind of ooh, so we're training toward that sound. Do I want a 10-year-old to sound like me making that sound? No, of course not. Course not. But am I going to start to train them to have fully adducted vocal folds? Am I going to start to train them to have their lips slightly forward to create that richer sound? Am I going to start to train them to have silent inhalation and an open throat sensation? Am I going to train all of those things? Yes, absolutely. Are they going to sound like me when they do it? No, they're going to sound like a 10-year-old singing in a Western classical style, which is much lighter, much, the color is going to be much cleaner. Cleaner might be the wrong word, but lighter. It's going to be very light. It's going to be not like heavy. They're not going to sound like an adult, right? Same thing with the belt sound. So yeah, are they going to sound like me? They might sound closer to me because structurally speaking and physiologically speaking, that a belt sound or a high mix sound is definitely closer to our speech level and than a Western classical sound is. Need a little more caffeine, need a little more caffeine. So it's going to be a little bit closer. Like the way that we're structurally set up as speech is going to be for speech is closer to a belt sound than it is to a Western classical sound, right? So if I'm training young singers to work in that mix or belty sound, they're likely going to sound closer to an adult singer using a belty sound. And let's face it, I mean, they're kind of using that belty sound all day on the playground, right? Well, not all of them, of course, but they're kind of using that all day. So they're going to sound closer to an adult sound, but they're still going to sound like a kid, right? We still want them to sound like a kid. So yeah, we're training toward that. We're just not expecting to have that same sound. Hopefully that makes sense. Middle school, and then how to calm overactivation of laryngeal muscles while singing. So this was kind of a two-parter. And when I first read it, I understood laryngeal muscles to mean muscles like intrinsic to the larynx. So the muscles that are directly related to phonation. So that's kind of what I understood that to mean. And so I said, like, you know, it's nearly impossible to isolate those muscles. Like you really can't. You know, you can't like sort of isolate your thyroid muscle and be like, okay, now you work or whatever. Like everybody works in such, you know, they all work together to create phonation. So, and they need to find that balance and coordination together. So like, how do you train one? You're always just training everybody together, basically. And so my recommendation for that is to try some semi-occluded vocal tract exercises if you haven't already, meaning use a straw, use tongue trills, use lip trills, all of the things that that you're likely already doing, and working toward that coordination. And then the second part of that question is, I have a student who has muscle activation in the strap muscles, which are the muscles that are, you can kind of see her, while singing, and nothing seems to help. So in response to that one, my question is, how do you know that the strap muscles are overly active? Is it just because you can see them pushing out, which is likely an indication that they're overly active? Yes, if you can see those muscles really engaging, you can see that happening, that's likely an indication that they're overly active. However, if there's no effect on the ease and the coordination of the tonal outcome, and if someone is creating tonal outcomes that they want, then do we really need to change these muscles? I mean, it may be because it doesn't look so great, and maybe because, yes, overall we want to have a little bit more release through the neck. Of course we do. Yes, but do we really need to change them to the point where we're like focusing exclusively on strap muscles to get those muscles released? Maybe not. Maybe so, maybe not. So something that I would recommend here is to, first of all, okay, so if this was a student of mine and I was really concerned about what was happening about over tension here, I would likely ask for some kind of movement during phonation, during breathing, during phonation, probably through the whole lesson, that would allow for those muscles to have something else to do, right? So they're likely getting a little overly involved and a little overly engaged, perhaps to have a sensation of support, if you will, or a sensation of stabilization. So that's likely the reason they're a little overly engaged. But I mean, who knows? We don't know. There may be a physiological thing that's going on there. There are so many reasons that we can have certain sets of muscles like more engaged than it looks like they should be. So, but something along these lines, I would ask them to do maybe like a very gentle movement where their eyes are tracking an invisible line across the room. So I'm going to sing my song. I'm going to just keep singing whatever I'm doing, and I'm going to have that gentle tracking motion. One of the young singers I worked with who did have a lot of tension through the neck area, she called that the creepy doll exercise, which is hilarious. The other one is to have them maybe create draw a Christmas tree with their nose, or a tree with their nose, or write their name with their nose as they're singing. So I'm gonna do like a scale. I'm gonna do can't think of any scales. Why? I'll just do that same scale I just did. So we'll do like, So I did that one in a more of a mixed contemporary sound, of course. And you can hear that at the top, things got a little bit like, weird and a little like unstable, and that's a good thing when we're doing this kind of exercise. We want to destabilize a little bit. We want to create other patterns in there, right? So those would be some things to consider if you're working specifically to release some of the musculature down through the neck. The other thing to consider is to, and also keep in mind that this is slow work. This is very slow work to kind of give those muscles something else to do. Very slow work. to create those other patterns, right? Those other movement patterns. But something else to consider on this one is, again, as I mentioned earlier with the breathing, is to outsource. So you could outsource to someone who does laryngeal massage, for example. We have a wonderful practitioner who's a speech language pathologist here in Toronto who does laryngeal massage or laryngeal massage, and he literally gets in there and like releases musculature, or going online and doing some of the, like there are some ways to do that yourself, working through in your own larynx, finding the places that feel whoops, sorry, I don't want to pause that. Finding the things in your own, teaching yourself how to do some of that release yourself physiologically. Again, working with someone like Sarah Whitten, Claudia Friedlander might also be someone who would be a resource on this. There are other people, but they're not going to. Kate Fraser-Neely might also be someone who would be a resource on this as well. Finding ways to just kind of release some of that musculature. Again, my initial question remains, how do you know that this is actually an issue? And then how do you know that this is the thing that's actually like changing the sound, right? So again, if there's something going on in the sound that you can see is directly directly related to the tension that you might be noticing in the throat, then that's certainly we likely want to address it. But if folks are getting the tonal outcomes they want, how much do we want to play with it? Like I said, do a little outsourcing there. Oh, so let me see here. So that was Claudia and Kate. Okay. Oh, one more question here. An online student consistently needs help with rep. Usually we do sing, repeat, a cappella, etc. But then they're reluctant to sing alone with an accompaniment track. And then the question was, how can I motivate them to be more independent? So, and again, my response to that one is like slowly, very, very slowly, because I don't have anything specific for this, because the reasons behind why a singer doesn't feel comfortable singing in a specific way can be so varied, right? So we're never, and I don't think the person who asked this question was thinking this, but we never want to assume that a student is being or that a person is being like obstinate, right? They're not being obstinate. They're not being defiant by not doing something. There's something blocking them from being able to do this thing, right? And it's not just like stubbornness or whatever. I mean, it may seem like it, it may feel like it, but there's definitely a why. There's always a why. There's always a reason, right? So it's possible that at some point in their lives, someone told them that they couldn't sing and they were doing karaoke at the time. And so now they maybe that, it's possible that there's trauma around it. It's possible that their parents are, or if it's a younger singer, that their parents are in the next room and they never want to be heard like as, singing with the accompaniment track. Like there's so many possibilities as to why singers, and the reason why I wanted to answer this question like here is because this question speaks to a bigger idea, which is what happens when folks don't seem to be motivated, or they seem to refuse to do something, or they seem to be stubborn around something, or even defiant around something, right? What happens? How do we motivate folks? And one of the big things is to find a why. What is actually happening here? And then in that part, but also find the why for why they're singing, why they're working on their voice. So what is the reason they're working on their singing voice? And then start to, if you feel that they need to if you feel that they do need to sing with an accompaniment track, I mean, maybe they don't ever need to sing with an accompaniment track. I don't know. Maybe it's possible that all you ever do is a cappella singing. Who knows? Maybe that's a possibility. I don't know. But if you feel that it's necessary, that they need to sing with an accompaniment track at some point in their lives, if you feel that that's necessary, which it may be. I'm not saying it is, but it may be. then you're going to start to find ways to join the why for the singing lessons. Why are you working on your voice? You're going to start to find ways to join that to this action. So, and to any action really, but start to find ways to join that. Not in a if you do this, if you don't do this, you'll never be able to do this way, or in a, you have to do this if, kind of, not in that kind of way. In a, here's your goal, and this is one of the amazing things along the way to your goal, right? So this is going to empower you, like this is the engagement way, right? So having said all of that, how can I motivate them to be more independent? Find their why. See if you can find a way to connect their singing lesson why to the thing that feels like it's going to help them to be more independent. That was a really fifi answer. Sorry about that. So someone who's trying to get me in trouble, maybe, teasing. Someone asked, can you explain the difference between, and let me make sure that I got the exact wording here, and then, oops, oh my gosh, sorry, I have to find it on the thing, and because I'm on my other laptop, and it's wonky, boop, there it is. So, can you explain the difference between breath pressure and breath flow? And yeah, and my answer was yes, I can. However, not on my stories, not in one sentence or less. So something to keep in mind about these terms is that voice science has specific definitions of these terms, and that we in the voice world have kind of taken these terms and we use them interchangeably, and we kind of put our own meanings on them, and we use them in specific ways, and we use them in in all different ways that aren't necessarily tied to what voice scientists would say, right? So there is a formula for, oh, and the other thing is that we kind of use the words like breath pressure and breath flow, whereas in our voice science colleagues are going to use flow, and that means a specific thing, and breath isn't necessarily related to it. What it is, it's totally related to it, but they're not necessarily going to say breath flow. They're going to say flow, and they're not necessarily going to say breath pressure. They're going to say pressure or subglottal pressure, or pressure phonation, what's it called? The pressure phonation, the phonation pressure threshold. Phonation pressure threshold. Yes, the threshold of pressure that's required to get phonation started. So this is the problem when we start to when we as voice teachers who are working in the studio where it's messy, it's super messy, where we're not measuring things and we're not oh, okay, so the phonation pressure threshold here was point blah blah blah, and now we need to change it to we're not doing those kinds of measurements, right? So essentially, when we're talking about pressure, we're talking about the way that air molecules kind of come together, the way that the gas actually comes together and forms underneath the vocal folds just before the folds start to vibrate, and is initiate lying? No, not quite, but and it helps to start that fold movement. It's way more complicated than that, and it is measurable how much pressure, in other words, how many of these air molecules we need and how close together they need to be, gas molecules, we need, and how close together they need to be in order to be part of this phonatory movement, the movement that creates phonation. However, we in the voice studio are like, okay, I would like you to use more breath pressure, or I would like that to be not as pressurized, or that sounds too pressurized, or that sounds blah, blah, blah. So we use that language far less specifically. And then the same with flow. Flow has a specific kind of rate of movement, and it's kind of, the difference kind of is, in science, I'm not like fully lying, but the difference basically in science is that the breath pressure or pressure has a little bit more to do with what's happening pre-phonatory and how those air molecules are coming together pre-phonatory, and flow has a little bit more to do with what happens as that gas, as those air molecules move through the vocal folds and how the folds vibrate, and then how that pressure wave how those molecules are, basically how they're moving and how they're energized. And again, in the voice studio, I will ask for like more flow, or I'll be like, ooh, can that be flowier? And what I mean is, can it be more released? And that it incorporates like musculature, how the air moves, like it incorporates so many other things. So we're not, they're completely related terms because they're both related to breath, air movement, sound waves, pressurization. Like they're both related to they're both completely related. But in the voice studio, we kind of tend to use them like however we want to describe specific outcomes, right? We kind of use them to describe and to change the way we're coordinating something to change the tonal outcome. Whereas in the scientific world, it's a lot more measurable. Hopefully that's a good answer to the question. I'm just looking to see here, Wendy, is this where I would ask how you can get younger students to get the ring in their sound? Will it be different if teaching Western versus mixed? Ooh, Wendy, this is so good. Because Wendy is in the child and adolescent voice practicum with me right now. And so Wendy, I'm gonna say to you, please ask that in the practicum, like on the polos that we're doing, and we'll get into it. Yeah, we'll get into it. Because this live right now is more like just like for anybody who wants to tune in. It's not like super specific, and also it's just more like, yeah. But that's a great question to ask in the practicum. So thank you, Wendy. Yeah, amazing. Yes. Okay. So those are all the questions that came in so far, anyway, that I have seen. Hopefully those are some of the answers that you were looking for. I will, on the Facebook page, and maybe I'll tag folks on the Instagram. Yeah, I'll just tag folks maybe on the Instagram, because can't really, yeah, I think I will. Anyway, I will try to get all of the resources tagged and locked in as well. So terrific. This one went a little longer than I would like, but that's okay, because lots of information there. So have a great Monday. Hopefully some of those ideas are useful, and I will see you on Friday at 12 o'clock my time. Oh no, let's do this. Let's stop that. And let's